right, welcome back to another edition of Cape and today as we get ready for the weekend. And as always, every Friday we have two cool interviews with Taylor Bradford of the Gloucester Daily Times and Erika Brown of the Manchester Cricket. Taylor leads off today with two really important stories. One is the closing of Topsfield Fair, and the other was severe flooding that happened throughout downtown Gloucester. Check it out.
So this week is a big one here in Cape Ann and the North Shore. If you guys didn't see, both in local and kind of broader news, the Topsfield Fair for 2020 has been canceled. The Essex Agricultural Society announced earlier on Wednesday that there will be no more Robinson Racing Pigs or truck derbies or any of the carnival games that we know and love here in Massachusetts. Those are going to be put on hold as people continue to navigate the pandemic. And so it's really unfortunate as, a lot of people come from out of town, but a lot of people, especially from Topsfield, this is something that they go to regularly. I have friends whose families have been having those seasonal passes for years, and you go as a child, you go as an adult. It's something that you do with both your family and loved ones and friends. So it'll look a lot different this fall, I'm sure, as people try to figure out what they're going to do. I mean, this summer we asked the same questions and people found a lot of things to do, but I know over at the Topsfield Fairgrounds they have found one thing to do, and that's a drive-in movie theater. So although they won't be doing their regular pumpkin weighing contest this year, which I know is a fan favorite, they will be providing a drive-in movie theater, which is actually pretty new to this area. To my knowledge, I haven't really seen anyone around here, but although they're kind of one of those classics that people always kind of dream about. So the Topsfield Fairgrounds does have one, and they, do different movies, Back to the Future. I think they just did Trolls, Star Wars, different things like that. And I'm not sure quite the exact pricing of one car, but you go and it's kind of limited to 25 cars, and you get in with, the people that you've quarantined with, and you can go watch a movie, tune in on that radio station, and enjoy a good summer evening over in Topsfield. So.
Well, Taylor, I was one of those kids who spent nights in the hay pile in the cattle barn because my uncle lived right up the street. He still does. My aunt still lives right up the street from the Topsfield Fair. So it was part of our culture, and my cousins and I would go there, and we helped in the cattle barn somehow. So I was one of those kids who spent, has fond memories of being, a child after hours at the Topsfield Fair. So.
Right. It's I would go twice a year, every year for, 20 years. And so you just get to know and consistency. And last year, went and reported on the giant pumpkin weighing contest. And that was something that I just did not know that there's a whole culture. It is a year-long process. I was really curious, you see all the people who have grown these pumpkins. I was really curious to know about their significant others, what their thoughts were about, the dedication to these pumpkins. And so, curious to know what they're going to be doing, if they're going to do weighing, because I'm sure that they're in the middle of their growing process right now. So There's a lot of questions of, people who've relied on this fair and really spent a lot of time and years to do their craft and present it to the community. So it'll be curious. I'm sure we'll do some stories on it, but
I hope so. I hope some of these contests go online somehow. I love seeing the backyard flowers that people were growing and those kinds of competitions, and then the baked good competitions. I mean, it's really, there's so much great American culture in there. I hope we can document it somehow.
Yeah.
I imagine the prices for pumpkin pie are going to bottom out this year with all the excess pumpkin. So we'll see. So there's something to look forward to at least. Yeah. All right. So Taylor, on a serious note, though, we want to talk about the flooding incident that happened in downtown Gloucester.
Right. So if you're here in Gloucester, specifically Main Street, over of last week on Thursday and Friday, we got hit by some really significant rain, really flash flooding that kind of made waves down on Main Street. And one of the people that, the organizations and companies that was impacted was the Surfari surf shop. They're in their busiest time of the season. They started to navigate and figure out how to continue to provide services and equipment and merchandise to people who are coming into the city during the pandemic. But, over the weekend when the water hit, it came and as one of the owners had mentioned, is Nicole Del Rosario. She said that the water flowed into pits right against the surf shop walls, a part of the abutting property, which is the construction of the new harbor village that's being done by Groom Construction. And then it poured into the basement. So it, from what she showed us when we went into the basement, is that it hit the wall and then went through the wall. And in a matter of 5 minutes, 6 feet of water filled up their basement and started going its way up the stairwell. And so just insane. And we went down there. She showed us kind of the situation and where the water levels had gone, trying to figure out how to salvage any of the property and stuff that she had down there. She said everything had been on tables to kind of for that reason, because there had been a history of flooding in their basement. So she had everything on tables, but she said, customers were there the day of the flood, and, all of a sudden Christian, one of the owners, was, in the back room and just started seeing water rise. And so they're trying to navigate now. They can't open because they're having to make sure the safety of their coworkers and of the people coming into the shop, to make sure that electrical is good and can go on safely, that this isn't going to happen again. But also brings up a question, because for the people at the Surfari shop and their neighboring laundromat, the question is, what's causing this? So there's been a couple of different things, and from their perspective, from when I've talked to them, they're really saying that the construction over at the former Cameron's restaurant, that is really causing it, because there's no drainage plan, because they're taking away the foundation, kind of abutting their properties. When I spoke to the people at Groom Construction and the Eileen Vogel over the North Shore CDC, they kind of talked about this. They didn't cause the flood. That wasn't something that they did, and they're really, really sorry. And they've talked about a little bit how they have been really trying to provide resources to help these businesses that have been impacted, come up and, come above water, most literally and figuratively, just during this time. And so trying to navigate, how do we go forward? How do they figure out how to continue construction in a safe way? And how can these businesses continue to run during a really hard time for all businesses around here? So it's a little bit, when you talk to a couple different people, you're getting different perspectives on, whose fault is it? Is it anybody's fault? But at the end of the day, I think everyone's really sorry for what's happened and trying to figure out how to best go forward.
Taylor, I haven't been there for a couple of weeks. Is the construction site open? Is there, so that rain just poured down into the foundation? Is that what happened?
Yeah, so when Eileen Vogel and I talked the other day, she kind of talked about how when Cameron's restaurant was there, they're most likely, when it rained hard like that, if it did, that water would go into their basement. But because there's no building anymore, the water went straight through and hit the abutting property. And so, she talked about how they do have a very comprehensive drainage plan prepared for the new building. How she said they have one ready to put in, and as they build up the property and as they complete the project, that will go in. But because they're in this motion of still tearing down and adjusting and building frames, it's kind of in the process. It's something that doesn't happen overnight. And so they're trying to figure that out, while other businesses are also trying to figure out their buildings that are, Main Street's old, the foundation, the basements, they've been around for a while. So.
Wow, such a blow to those businesses for sure. Really at hard times anyway. So so Action Inc. is building the Harbor Village, right? Have they made a statement at all? Is that?
So it's Action Inc. and North Shore CDC.
Oh,
so they're together. Yeah. So I spoke with North Shore CDC, as Eileen Vogel is kind of the project manager for both. Yeah, as they're working. They're working with construction. So I spoke with Eileen Vogel from North Shore CDC, and then David Groom from Groom Construction.
Okay.
Their work is really focused on these multi-purpose buildings that kind of serve the community, right? The Harbor Village will be both a retail and also affordable housing. So that's kind of what their focus is on. And David talked about how they really actually flew parts over from California when they heard that there had been flooding, and trying to provide places for the Surfari shops, different stuff to be stored and taken care of. So it seems like everyone has the best intentions in mind, is just trying to figure out how is it being used and is it being helpful. So that's the question, and it'll continue as they all try to navigate going forward.
and going forward, they have this plan in place. So these shops Surfari should not be concerned about having a bad neighbor or a bad drainage plan, right?
That's the hope. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah, we'll see what happens.
Well, 6 feet of water in 5 minutes. We're lucky no one got hurt. That's pretty astonishing. So,
Right.
all right, great work again, Taylor. Have a good weekend, and we will catch you in all your work with the Gloucester Daily Times next week.
Sounds great. Have a great day, guys. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. So such a tough week for Surfari Surf Shop, and they are such a great resource for all the surfers out on Good Harbor, so and all around Cape Ann. So our hearts go out to them.
Yeah, and the laundromat too. I mean, that'd be a huge inconvenience for them. So hopefully that issue gets resolved, because that could be big trouble coming down the road here. So, all right, our second interview today is with Erika Brown. She is the publisher and editor of the Manchester Cricket. We speak with her every week about all things Manchester and Essex. Here she is talking about a handful of subjects, including the tear down of the Eagle's Nest at the elementary school, what is going on with the public boat ramp, and then pollution at Gray Beach, and also a huge story on Agassi Rock. Here's Erika.
Hey guys, how are you?
Good to see you, Erika.
Great to see you guys. We've got a lot going on this week, plenty of stuff. Over in Essex, we've got a couple of things that sort of made it into the paper this week. First of all, we had the Eagle's Nest. Are you familiar with the Eagle's Nest?
Very familiar. Lots of splinters in my little children's hands years ago from the Eagle's Nest, but it was a great playground.
It is a great playground. It's really unique, and it's unique for a lot of reasons, but it finally came down last week. I want to say 2 months ago, the school committee decided, to a lot of controversy and a lot of expression of angst, that they would be taking it down because it had come to the end of its life. It was no longer safe. So they made that decision, and then finally last week it did come down. And there are plans there for sort of the next iteration of what will be sort of the Eagle's Nest. But it's been this lovely, big, kind of magical play structure, really, really large, at the Essex Elementary School. This week, what happened is it actually went down last week. And before it went down, Chris McGinstraub went over and took pictures for us and wrote a really great piece on the coming down of this play structure. And then really more importantly, in 1987, the story of it going up in the first place. It's a really fantastic story. Bonnie and Bill Bradford and Dawn and Wesley Burnham they posed appropriately in front of the structure before it went down, because those were the two couples who sort of led this community-wide effort to essentially bring up the structure in the first place in 1987. All hands were on deck, and over 5 days, I want to say 30 residents worked tirelessly in the rain to put it up. So it was almost like a barn raising, or or a house raising in Pennsylvania. It's a really lovely story. We have some great pictures from back then. Everyone looks a lot younger, and they have a lot more energy.
It's so interesting. I think we've had a similar issue in Rockport with a very a play structure there was a lot of emotional attachment to it, and it was built by the community. And man, it was a big issue when that thing needed to come down because of regulations and things not being safe. So it's really interesting how attached the community becomes to these places.
Yeah, and it's also kind of interesting as a side note that those regulations, if they were in place back then, it means the structure wouldn't have gone up in the first place, more than likely. So it's almost too bad that these community efforts where just everyone gets together, they donate their time, they donate their tools, they donate their lumber, and they put something together for the kids. That's a time that on public spaces probably isn't happening anymore.
Right. I think that's probably true.
Yeah. Another thing that happened was this week, also in Essex, actually, the Board of Selectmen voted to close their town ramp to outside, non-residents. Now, this is the second time they've done that. They kind of opened it up. They said, no, in the spring. I don't know if you remember that story with COVID. They just closed everything down, along with Canomo Point, to non-residents.
Right.
Because they're such a beautiful destination. The boat ramp is a little different because it's got great parking. It's right on the causeway on 133, basically downtown. So the conversation, and there's great parking there that's really easy for trucks or cars and their trailers, their boat trailers, to just kind of sloop right in there and hang out there and launch their boats. And a lot of them come from Ipswich, apparently. So there has been a big discussion about it. They opened it up earlier in July, and now they've decided to close it because it's just causing too many problems from people out of town coming in. So that's happening, and it sparked a big debate that I've been listening to for the last 3 months, which is, does the boat ramp and does boat traffic actually help restaurant business in downtown Essex? And I think they've concluded that it kind of doesn't, that they're not related. But in any case, they did do that, and they're warning people that they're going to start towing and ticketing. That's also connected with the fact that they are considering doing metered parking in Essex as a way of regulating traffic from non-residents, but then also getting a little money. So that's also going on at the same time. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. Yeah. As a matter of fact, Manchester, it's funny. I spoke with Bion Pike, our harbor master, this week to find out, I just wanted to double check, is that going on here? And he said, no, we've never closed it to non-residents, but there's a catch. There's no parking. So it's almost self-regulating, right? You can proudly say, oh, we're open to non-residents, but we don't provide parking.
Right. So metered parking in Essex, how do restaurants feel about that, do you think?
I don't know. They're at the beginning of the discussion. I know Ruth Perrine from she's the chairman of the Board of Selectmen. She's taken on the lead, it seems, to researching this. I think Essex has a strong and long history of looking for creative ways to make revenue. And I don't, so I think that this is something that's really legitimate. In terms of businesses, though, here's the argument. You can say, well, maybe that's a problem for businesses. Let me tell you what's a bigger problem for businesses. If people come use town parking on the side of the street and they stay there all day long, they hog up a space. So one of the things that metered parking is really good for is it keeps everything moving.
Right.
Which is good for businesses, right?
Exactly.
It's like when you go into a restaurant or a diner, they don't want TVs there or even newspapers out because they just don't want people idling. It's like, turnover. We need turnover here.
Exactly. There's like a whole industry of design based on that, by the way. You ever wonder why in casinos in Las Vegas the rugs are so loud and garish? It's not because they're loud and garish, because they don't want you looking down. They want you up looking around.
So they make them so ugly you don't look at them? Is that what the point is?
Oh no, it's because it's so loud and so
harsh to look at.
It's harsh.
Yeah.
Oh, so Erika, I know what I wanted to bring up today was the closing of Magnolia or Grey Beach on the Manchester side, which I can't remember that ever happening.
Yeah, I know. They've been really that's actually sort of a new thing. They just announced it within the last 2 days. And that's sort of hot off the presses. I know that there's a lot of controversy associated with that. And, Manchester, it's interesting. When we look back at Manchester this summer and how they've tried to regulate traffic on the beach for the public, they've definitely had a strong hand, and Grey Beach definitely feeds into that. So I'm going to be looking into that for next week's paper.
Cool. Okay. And lastly, do you want to touch upon the story surrounding Agassi Rock?
Oh yeah, that's a big one for us this week. We actually broke the story.
Congrats.
Hilarious. So we broke the story, but we've been tracking this for a while. The Trustees of Reservation, now known as just the Trustees, they have 120 properties across Massachusetts. They're a conservation group, and they have, Ravenswood. They've got Misery Island. They've got Coolidge Point. They've got tons of properties. Right. And of course, Castle Hill and Cranes Beach. They made the decision this week that they were going to change. They've committed to changing the name of Agassi in Agassi Rock. Doesn't mean they're going to drop the name entirely. They are considering keeping the name so that people understand and are educated about the history of the man named Louis Agassi. But we have a really great piece on it. Liz Brown Swanson and I are going to be doing a whole kind of segment, a big segment, and we're going to have an interview on that. Where we're going to talk about the whole background and story, but they've decided, since they've owned it in 1957, this whole time, it's been known as Agassi Rock. It's a popular hiking spot in Manchester. You can see all over the place from up there, and it's Big Agassi and Little Agassi rocks, so they actually are rocks, or formations, rock formations from the Ice Age. and they've decided to change the name. And there's a really interesting story about it. It has to do with the whole renaming of monuments and renaming of buildings around the racial sensitivity issue.
Well, it's good to see that the trustees are responding to that social conversation.
Yeah, I think we should talk about it. I mean, more. We should have Lake Liz and see if maybe we can join in.
We would love. Let's have Liz next week. All right.
Yeah.
We'd love to hear the longer conversation about this.
I'm gonna pull her in.
Yeah. My old friend Liz.
Yeah, and you can always watch Liz and Erika on Scoop Manchester. How often are you doing that, Erika?
We're doing it. We used to do it once a month. Now it's slightly more often, and it runs like 8 times a week on Cape Ann TV. Which I'm sorry, it's 1623.
Right. Well, great work once again, Erika. Thanks for all this. And yeah, let's follow up on the Gray Beach conversation next week, and hopefully Liz can join us.
Fantastic. All right, guys. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.